I sat in my car outside the office building, staring at the sleek glass entrance as people bustled in and out. A delivery guy was making his way inside, balancing a large, expensive-looking bouquet of roses in one hand and a small wrapped package in the other. I knew exactly who it was for. Emily. My wife. Or at least, the woman I had been stupid enough to think of as my wife. 3 weeks earlier, I had no idea my life was a joke. I had no idea I was the punchline to some cruel, pathetic story that was unfolding behind my back. It started with something simple, a gut feeling. You know the kind, the one that gnaws at the edges of your mind, whispering that something is wrong even when you have no proof. But proof has a way of finding you when you stop looking away. I had just gotten home from work early one day when I noticed her laptop open on the kitchen counter. She never left it out. Ever. Emily was careful with her things, especially her devices. That alone was strange, but what really made my pulse spike was the open email tab. Not just open mid-typing. She had been composing a message but never hit send. I don't know what possessed me to read it. Maybe the way my stomach twisted when I saw the words, "I can't wait to see you again. Last night was perfect." My mind stalled. My hands felt numb. My name wasn't in that email. That message wasn't for me. I scrolled down, my heart pounding harder with each line. The messages weren't just from that day. They stretched back for weeks. Sweet nothings, inside jokes, plans, and then the worst part, descriptions of things they had done together, details of places they had met, times, dates, a roadmap of betrayal laid out in neatly typed words, right there in our kitchen. I didn't move for what felt like hours. My body went cold and hot all at once, rage and disbelief tangling together in my chest. My wife, Emily, the woman who kissed me every morning before work, who curled up next to me on the couch, who laughed at my stupid jokes, was living a double life. And she was so damn comfortable in it that she had left the evidence sitting on the counter like it was nothing. I should have confronted her then. I should have walked into the bedroom, grabbed her phone, and demanded the truth. But something in me held back. Not fear. Not yet. Just calculation. Because if she had been playing me for a fool, I wanted to know exactly how deep the lie ran. So I played along. For 3 weeks, I acted like nothing had changed. I kissed her goodbye in the morning. I asked about her day. I listened to her stories, all while knowing she was feeding me scripted lines. And in the meantime, I started piecing things together. The emails were one thing, but I needed more. I checked our shared bank statements. There were charges at restaurants I had never been to, hotel stays she never mentioned. I found a second phone hidden in her car, tucked away in the glove compartment like some pathetic teenage secret. A second phone. Who even does that in real life? Who turns their marriage into a crime scene? And then I found him. His name was in her emails. His messages were on the second phone. And once I had his name, it was easy to track him down. Coworker. Of course. Some hotshot at her office. A guy she had apparently been sneaking around with for months, if not longer. My wife had turned our marriage into a joke, and this man, this idiot, had been laughing right alongside her. But if Emily thought I was just going to sit back and let her walk all over me, she had no idea who she was dealing with. I had a plan, and it started with a simple delivery. The moment the delivery guy stepped into the building, I knew there was no turning back. I had orchestrated every detail, and now the pieces were falling into place. My hands clenched into fists as I imagined Emily's face when she saw what was coming for her. She thought she had been careful. She thought I was clueless. She was about to learn exactly how wrong she was. 3 days ago, I made a phone call. A simple request to a florist for the most extravagant bouquet they could put together on short notice. Roses, lilies, orchids, the kind of arrangement that screams I love you, I adore you, you mean the world to me. Except that wasn't the message I had included. I had drafted a note with careful precision, making sure every single word hit like a bullet. To the most dedicated employee at company name, who manages to juggle a busy work schedule, a loving husband, and an enthusiastic extracurricular life with lover's name, you are truly an inspiration to us all. Enjoy your special gift. You've earned it. Oh, and that wasn't all. I had attached something extra to the bouquet. Printed screenshots. Dozens of them. Her emails, her texts, her pathetic little love notes. I had combed through every piece of evidence, highlighting the most damning messages in red ink, like a professor grading an exam. And just to add a little flair, a copy of our wedding photo, neatly tucked inside the envelope. A reminder of the life she had so carelessly destroyed. Now, standing outside, I waited. The delivery guy disappeared through the glass doors, and I imagined the front desk receptionist cheerfully calling Emily's extension, letting her know she had a surprise waiting for her. I pictured the moment she would step out, flashing that fake smile she had perfected over the years, expecting to be met with admiration. But instead, she would unwrap the worst moment of her life, right there, in the middle of her office. Minutes passed. The building loomed in front of me, cold and indifferent. And then, finally, it happened. The first sign of chaos. A figure moved quickly through the glass lobby. Emily, her posture stiff, her movements frantic. She clutched the bouquet in one hand, the opened envelope in the other. Even from a distance, I could see her breath quickening, her chest rising and falling in sharp, panicked movements. Then she turned her head, scanning the street, searching, looking for me. Oh, I was here, right where I wanted to be. She yanked out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. A second later, mine buzzed. Emily, where are you? What the hell is this? I let her sit with the panic for a moment. I wanted her to feel it, the same way I had felt that day in the kitchen when I realized my life had been nothing but a lie. I let another message come through. Emily, answer me. Now. I smiled. Then, slowly, I typed my response. Me, enjoy the flowers, sweetheart. You've earned them. I hit send and watched as she read the message. She staggered. Actually staggered. Like the weight of it all had just hit her. And then the real show began. Her phone rang. Not mine this time. Someone else. The guy. I knew it was him by the way she recoiled before answering, pressing the device to her ear and hissing something I couldn't hear. She glanced around, lowering her voice, but her expression said everything. Panic, fear, desperation. I had ripped her perfect little secret out of the shadows and thrown it into the light for everyone to see. And now she had nowhere to hide. I leaned back in my seat, enjoying the view. Let her squirm. This was just the beginning. Emily disappeared back into the building, moving fast, her head ducked low, gripping the bouquet like she wanted to crush it in her hands. I imagined the thoughts racing through her mind. Who had seen? Had her coworkers read the note? Did they know? And more importantly, how much more did I know? Good. Let her stew in that. I didn't rush home. I wanted her to have time to panic, to scramble, to try and figure out how deep in she was. Let her make some calls. Let her beg her little office boyfriend for a solution. There wasn't one. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the sun was low, casting everything in an eerie orange glow. My chest felt tight, but not with sadness. Not anymore. The grief had burned out, leaving only the cold, sharp edge of something much stronger. I stepped inside, locking the door behind me, and walked into the living room like it was just another day. I sat down, turned on the TV, and waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Then, the front door burst open. Emily stormed in, still clutching the ruined bouquet, the crumpled envelope in her fist. Her face was flushed, her breathing uneven. She was unraveling, right there in front of me. You? She choked on the word, shaking the paper in her hand like it was a weapon. What the hell is this? I didn't answer. I let the silence stretch, let her hear the distant hum of the TV. The ticking of the clock on the wall. I wanted her to feel it, the quiet before the storm. She took a step closer. Are you out of your mind? You sent this to my office. I tilted my head slightly. Didn't you like it? I thought you'd appreciate the gesture. You know, after all your hard work juggling two men at once. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She wasn't expecting me to be this calm. She was expecting yelling, maybe tears. But I wasn't playing the role she had prepared for me. Her fingers tightened around the paper. You're acting insane. This is humiliating. People at work saw this. I nodded. Yeah, I figured they would. Her eyes darted around the room like she was searching for an escape, for something to grab onto. I don't even know what you think you know, but I laughed, actually laughed. That made her freeze. What I think I know, I repeated, standing up slowly. Emily, I know everything. I pulled my phone from my pocket and, with a few taps, opened the folder I had created. Screenshots, photos, bank statements, a collection of every single lie she had ever told me, neatly categorized. I turned the screen toward her. She barely glanced at it before looking away, her jaw tightening. That doesn't mean anything, she said, too quickly. You're reading into things. I can't wait to see you again. Last night was perfect. I read the words out loud, watching as her face lost what little color it had left. I miss you already. I wish I could wake up next to you every morning instead of sneaking out before he notices. Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. I took a step closer. Tell me, Emily, what exactly am I reading into? Silence. The air between us was thick, heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out how to spin this, how to twist it into something that wasn't her fault. And then, she did what I should have expected all along. She laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that made my stomach turn. You're so dramatic, she said, shaking her head. This is why She caught herself, snapping her mouth shut, but it was too late. I stepped even closer, lowering my voice. Go ahead. Finish that sentence. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. You've been so distant lately, she muttered, her voice softer now, like she was switching tactics. We haven't been us for a while, and I just needed someone to talk to. Someone who actually listens. I stared at her. That's the excuse you're going with? That I made you cheat? She crossed her arms, shifting her weight. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, you've been different, cold, and I felt alone. I laughed again, but this time it came out harsher. Emily, I have been cold for 3 weeks. You've been sneaking around for months. Her jaw clenched. She hated that I had caught her. Hated that I wasn't giving her an easy out. Look, she huffed, tossing the ruined bouquet onto the coffee table like it was physically offending her. I don't know what you expect me to say. You already decided I'm the villain. So what's the point? What do you want from me? I stared at her for a long moment. Then, finally, I said, I want you to pack your things. Her head snapped up. What? You heard me. I stepped back, giving her space to move. Pack your things. You're leaving. She blinked, like the words weren't processing. You're serious? Dead serious. Her mouth opened, then closed. Then she laughed again, but this time it was nervous, edged with something close to panic. You can't just... What? You think you can kick me out like some random stranger? Yes. I didn't hesitate, because that's exactly what you are now. Her face twisted. I have nowhere to go. I shrugged. Not my problem. For the first time, she looked truly afraid. Not just of the situation, but of me. She had expected to control this narrative, to manipulate it, twist it, make it go the way she wanted. But for once, she had no control at all. And that terrified her. Maybe you should call your little boyfriend, I said, turning away. See if he has a spare bed for you. I didn't wait to hear her response. I walked to the door, opened it wide, and waited. She didn't move. So I looked at her one last time, my voice steady. Final. Pack your things, Emily. You're done here. Emily didn't move. She just stood there, her fingers curled into fists at her sides, her breathing sharp and uneven. For the first time in what I assumed was a long time, she was trapped. No excuses, no lies to spin, no way out. And I could see it, the exact moment she realized she had lost control. You're being ridiculous, she snapped, her voice shaking. You're overreacting, and you know it. I didn't answer. I just kept the door open. She let out a sharp breath and ran a hand through her hair. You're throwing away everything we've built over a mistake? That word. Mistake. I clenched my jaw so tightly it ached. A mistake, I echoed, turning my head slightly. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. A mistake is sending a text to the wrong person. A mistake is tripping on a sidewalk. I took a slow step toward her, lowering my voice. You didn't make a mistake, Emily. You made a choice. Over and over again. You chose to lie. You chose to sneak around. You chose to sleep in another man's bed and then come home to mine like nothing happened. She opened her mouth, but I wasn't done. You chose to turn me into an idiot in my own home. Silence. She looked away, her arms crossing tightly over her chest like she could physically protect herself from my words. But I wasn't finished with her. You didn't seem too guilty when you were laughing in his messages, I said, tilting my head. You didn't seem torn when you were sending him pictures from our bedroom. That hit, a visible flinch. I hadn't planned on bringing that up yet, but she deserved it. I let the words sink in before I continued. My voice calmer now, colder. The only thing you regret is getting caught. Her jaw tightened. It wasn't like that. I exhaled a laugh, shaking my head. Oh? Then what was it like? Emily? Enlighten me. She looked at me then, her eyes flickering with something desperate. She stopped herself. She had nothing. No excuse. No defense. Just a pathetic, miserable realization that she had nothing. Her fingers twitched, like she wanted to grab her phone, probably to call him, to beg him to tell her what to do. But I wasn't about to let her escape this. You don't even know what to say, do you? I asked, watching her crumble in real time. Her lips pressed together, her nostrils flaring slightly as she tried to steady her breath. You're really not going to hear me out? I let out a slow breath, running a hand over my jaw. Hear you out, I repeated. Emily, I have listened to you lie to my face for months. I have heard plenty. She swallowed hard, her eyes darting to the door. She wasn't leaving yet. She still thought she could fix this. So I made it clear. You're done here, I said again, stepping back and motioning toward the stairs. Pack your things. I live here, she said through clenched teeth. You did. She let out a sharp, humorless laugh, shaking her head. Oh, that's rich. So what, you think you can just throw me out? Like I mean nothing. I stared at her, my expression unreadable. She already knew the answer. Her face twisted into something ugly then. Anger, frustration, maybe even a little fear. But I wasn't playing her game anymore. Where am I even supposed to go? She demanded, her voice rising. You don't care, do you? You just want to punish me. You want to humiliate me. I tilted my head slightly. You managed that all on your own. Her hands curled into fists, her shoulders shaking. I had never seen her like this before. Exposed. Vulnerable. Stripped of the arrogance she had worn so well when she thought I was blind to her betrayal. She hated it. She hated that I wasn't begging for an explanation, that I wasn't yelling or breaking things, that I wasn't giving her the chance to manipulate the situation. I wasn't her fool anymore. Finally, she let out a sharp breath and turned on her heel, marching up the stairs. I followed, slow and steady. The bedroom door slammed shut behind her. For the next half hour, I listened to the sounds of drawers yanking open, clothes being shoved into bags, angry footsteps pacing back and forth. I leaned against the hallway wall, arms crossed, waiting. And then, finally, she emerged. A suitcase in one hand, a duffel bag slung over her shoulder. She looked at me, her expression unreadable. This is insane, she muttered. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. I didn't even blink. No, Emily, you did. She shook her head, letting out a bitter laugh. You're gonna regret this. I raised an eyebrow. Not as much as you will. She glared at me, gripping her suitcase tighter. Then, without another word, she stormed down the stairs. I followed. She yanked open the front door, hesitating for just a second before stepping out onto the porch. She turned around, like she wanted to say something else, maybe one last lie. One last attempt to dig herself out of the grave she had spent months digging. But I didn't give her the chance. I reached for the door, and I slammed it shut in her face. The silence after the door slammed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. I stood there for a moment, staring at the wood, listening. Nothing. No knocking. No screaming. No pathetic last-ditch effort to worm her way back inside. She was gone. I exhaled, slow and steady, rolling my shoulders like I was shaking off months of weight pressing down on me. But the truth was, the moment felt empty, not victorious, not satisfying, just hollow, because this wasn't how I had ever imagined my life would be. I turned away from the door and walked back into the living room, my eyes sweeping over everything. The couch where we used to sit together, her legs draped over my lap. The bookshelf where she had crammed all her stupid romance novels. The kitchen where she had stood just a few weeks ago, laughing at some joke I had told, kissing me on the cheek before sneaking off to text him. My stomach twisted, but not with sadness, with disgust. This house didn't feel like ours anymore. Felt like a crime scene, a place where I had been played for a fool over and over again, where she had walked through every room dripping in deception, smiling in my face while stabbing me in the back. I couldn't stay here. Not tonight. I grabbed my keys and left without a second thought. An hour later, I was sitting in a dimly lit bar, nursing a whiskey I hadn't even touched. The ice clinked against the glass as I swirled it, my mind running in 1,000 different directions. I should have felt free, relieved, like I had ripped off a Band-Aid and could finally start healing. But all I felt was rage. Not just at Emily, at him, her little office boy, the one she had been sneaking around with, sending messages to behind my back, laughing with while I was out there working my ass off to give her a good life. I had made sure to expose her at work, but that wasn't enough. He was still out there, completely untouched by any of this, probably comforting her right now, whispering in her ear about how I was the bad guy, how he was the one who truly understood her. And that didn't sit right with me. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my collected screenshots. I had his number, his name, his workplace. I had everything. And as I stared at his smug little texts, his cringeworthy pet names for my wife, I made a decision. Emily wasn't the only one who needed to face the consequences. It was time for him to get what he deserved. I left the bar without finishing my drink. The moment my mind locked onto the idea, I couldn't sit still. My blood was too hot, my body too wired. Emily had already tasted humiliation. Now it was his turn. I slid into my car, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. My phone sat in the passenger seat, screen still glowing with his name and number. Brandon Carter. That was him. The man who had helped my wife turn our marriage into a joke. The man she had whispered to while lying next to me in bed. The man who had sent texts like, "Wish I could have woken up next to you this morning. Does he even touch you the way I do? I can't wait to have you again." Every single message was burned into my brain, fueling something dark inside me. I had options. Plenty of them. I could call him, let him hear my voice dripping with the rage he so easily ignored while stealing another man's wife. I could show up at his office, let his coworkers, his boss, know exactly the kind of person he was. I could find his address, wait until he least expected it, and drop a little truth bomb on his personal life. I tapped his name on my phone. My thumb hovered over the call button. No, not yet. A phone call was too easy, too simple. He could hang up, ignore it, brush it off. No, I needed something he couldn't escape from. So I did something better. I started digging. By the time I was done, I knew more about Brandon Carter than I had any right to. His LinkedIn profile was polished, full of the usual corporate nonsense. Results-driven, team leader, passionate about success. What a joke. I scrolled past it, looking for something real. And then I found it. A personal blog, buried under his real name, attached to an old Twitter account he probably thought was forgotten. A few posts about his job, his love for classic cars, some boring fitness updates. But one post stood out. A heartfelt, deeply personal entry from 2 years ago. Why honesty is the foundation of every relationship. I nearly laughed out loud. Brandon had written an entire essay about how he believed in loyalty, in transparency, in being a good man. Cheating is the ultimate betrayal, he had written. Anyone who does it is weak. If you want someone else, have the courage to leave first. No excuses. Oh, Brandon, you absolute hypocrite. I copied the link and saved it. Then I found something even better. His Facebook, private but not locked down enough. His profile picture was a happy shot of him at a family gathering, arm wrapped around a woman. Pretty, smiling, oblivious. His fiancée. I clicked through, scanning the captions. They had been together for 5 years. Recently engaged. Wedding planned for next summer. Perfect. I sat back in my chair, exhaling slowly, feeling the first real sense of satisfaction all night. Emily thought she had wrecked my life. She had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I put everything in motion. Brandon's work email was easy enough to find. It was listed right on his company website. I drafted a message, attached all the screenshots, and kept it brutally simple. To Brandon Carter. Subject: Thought you should know. Hey Brandon, since you're such a believer in honesty, I figured it was time for some transparency in your own life. Attached are messages between you and my wife. I hope your fiancé finds them as inspiring as I did. A concerned husband. I stared at the screen for a moment, then hit send. And because that wasn't enough, I found his fiancé's Instagram. I sent her the same message. Less than a minute later, my phone buzzed. Brandon Carter. Who the hell are you? I smiled. Now the fun really began. I didn't answer Brandon's message. Not yet. Let him sit in his own mess for a while. Let him feel that pit in his stomach, that creeping realization that his world was about to collapse. I imagined him checking his phone over and over, waiting for a response that wasn't coming. I imagined his fiancée, staring at those messages, reading every word, putting the puzzle together. Good. Let them both drown in it. But I wasn't done. I wanted to see the destruction unfold in real time. By noon, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Brandon had gone from rage to desperation in the span of an hour. Brandon Carter. Listen, man, I didn't know she was married. Brandon Carter. It wasn't like that. She told me you two were basically over. That you didn't even sleep in the same bed anymore. Brandon Carter, let's talk. We don't have to do this. Just call me. I smirked. He was scrambling. He knew he was screwed. But the best message came a little after lunch. Brandon Carter. You don't understand. My fiancée is losing her mind. She won't answer my calls. She blocked me. She told her family. Please, we can fix this. There it was. His life was blowing up, and I was the one lighting the match. I finally typed a response. Me, fix it? Like how you fixed my marriage. No reply. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. And then, Brandon Carter. I get it. Okay? I screwed up. But you got your revenge. Just tell her I'm not a bad guy. I don't deserve to lose everything over this. I actually laughed out loud. He didn't deserve to lose everything? He had helped destroy my marriage without a second thought. He had snuck around, sent those messages, slept with a married woman, and now he wanted mercy? No, that wasn't how this worked. Me, she deserves the truth, just like I did. And then, just because I wanted to twist the knife a little deeper. Me, good luck with the wedding, by the way. I turned off my phone. I was done with Brandon Carter. That evening, my house felt lighter. Emily was gone. Brandon was in free fall. The weight of betrayal that had been sitting on my chest for months had finally lifted. For the first time, I could breathe. I sat in my living room, stretched out on the couch, and just existed. No lies, no paranoia, no wondering where my wife was or who she was texting. And it felt damn good. I didn't need closure. I didn't need a dramatic final conversation with Emily or some fake apology from Brandon. They had both gotten exactly what they deserved. And I was finally free. The silence in the house felt different now. Not empty, not hollow, just peaceful. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was standing in a place polluted with lies. The air was clearer, the weight on my chest gone. I had ripped the infection out at the root. Emily was gone, Brandon was spiraling, and I was finally done with the wreckage they had left behind. I sat back on the couch, stretching my legs out, letting the satisfaction settle in. There was no guilt, no regret. They had played their little game. They just hadn't expected me to play back. 2 days passed without a word from Emily. No calls, no texts, nothing. I expected her to reach out, maybe to beg, maybe to throw one last insult my way, but instead, it was radio silence. I wasn't stupid. She wasn't gone. She was just waiting. I knew her well enough to know she wasn't the type to go down without a fight. She had probably been spending the last 2 days holed up somewhere, strategizing, figuring out what angle to take next. And sure enough, on the 3rd day, she showed up. I heard the knock at the door while I was making coffee. 3 sharp, impatient raps. I didn't move at first, just stared at the door, debating whether or not I even wanted to deal with her. Then, another knock, louder this time. I let out a slow breath and finally opened it. And there she was, Emily. She looked awful. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun, dark circles under her eyes. Her usually perfect makeup smudged from what looked like hours of crying. She clutched her phone in one hand, a small duffel bag over her shoulder. She had expected me to cave. She had expected me to see her like this and feel sorry for her. She had no idea how far past that I was. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Talk about what?" Her throat bobbed. "Us. There is no us." She flinched, gripping the strap of her bag. I don't have anywhere to go. Not my problem." I just looked at her, waiting. She let out a shaky breath. "I made a mistake." There it was, the beginning of the script. I stayed silent. She took a step closer, voice trembling. "I was stupid, okay? I don't even know why I did it." I tilted my head slightly. "That's funny. You seem to know exactly what you were doing in your messages." Her face crumpled, like she wanted to cry again. "I miss you," she whispered. I blinked. "Miss me?" The sheer audacity of this woman. "You miss me," I repeated, my voice eerily calm. She nodded, looking at me like I was supposed to pull her into my arms and pretend none of this had happened, like I was supposed to forget. I leaned in slightly, dropping my voice just enough for her to feel it. "You miss me?" I said slowly. "Or you miss having a man who actually gave a damn about you?" She inhaled sharply, because she knew. She knew she hadn't come back for me. She had come back because Brandon was gone. I had seen the updates. His fiancée had thrown him out, changed her relationship status to single, deleted all their photos. He had been wiped from her life like a stain she was finally done scrubbing. And that meant Emily had nowhere else to turn. She had burned everything down, and now she was crawling back to the only thing left standing. But I wasn't her safety net. I wasn't the man who was going to save her. I was the man who had already walked away. I took a slow step back and grabbed the door. Her eyes widened. "Wait!" I slammed it shut. This time, I didn't listen for footsteps. I didn't wait for another knock. I didn't care what she did next, because I was done. For good.